Now, still staying around that, in recent times, we've seen a lot of conversation around the oil and gas and attention given to the NNPCL. We saw their results, for instance. Now, let's look at those results. We're going to try to understand the impact of it. So we see NNPCL for 2023. Now, we begin with the company. We see the revenue at 23.99 million naira. Profits before income tax at almost 6 million, 5.988 million. And then we see profit itself at 3.297, and total comprehensive income for that period for 2023 at 19.773. Now we look at, this is for the group. Can we see for the company? We also have results for the company. Yes, so there you have for the company and not the whole comprehensive group of it. Revenue at 8.13 million. Profit before tax just about 4 million. Profits, the general profit at 2.22, and total comprehensive income is at 11.779 million naira. Now let's talk to someone who can help us to understand perhaps the implication of these numbers. Of course, we've heard stories. Is the NNPC paying into the national coffers? Are they using it for subsidy? Is there subsidy? Let's try to understand some of this. Following these numbers, Dr. Chinan Dikwa, he's the Vice Chair of African Energy Council. Dr. Dikwa, good afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Hi, Ini, good afternoon, and pleasure to be here.
Great. So a lot of people, when we see the numbers from NNPCL, we're like, what's happening? Can we compare NNPCL with Saudi Aramco? Perhaps it's too early for that. But what are the numbers, the profit that we see here from 2023, our revenue of about 23.99 million, that's for the group. That profit is about 3.2. What does it tell us about the running and efficiency of NNPCL at this time?
Well, thanks, Ian. And I think that's the fundamental question. What you mentioned there was the efficiency of running of the organization. But before I answer that, I would say this, Ian, there's a lot of reasons for us to cheer as Nigerians for this result that's come out. There are lots of positives we can take away, no doubt about that. Incorporated 46 years ago, NNPC never turned a profit, never turned a profit until 2020. So on the 40th attempt, it turned a modest profit, and it's been going up and ramping up all the way till 2023, which is what we're talking about today. So you mentioned it, I spoke about that, 3.3 trillion naira of profit, which is very decent. If you convert that to dollars, talking about $2.7 billion. So it's very significant, and I think a lot of reasons for us to cheer about. Now, there are other dimensions in there as well that I think people need to pay attention to, because profit is only one line item. There are other line items there that really we should interrogate. So what's the total revenue? Total revenue is total, sales, money that's come in. What's the cash inflow into NNPC? And I think that's the big one there. So the inflow for the year 2023 was 23.9 trillion naira. If you contrast that to 2022, it was 8.8 trillion. So a massive increase. Again, something for us to cheer about. But I'm saying that cautiously, When you look at the numbers and you just compare year on year, 2022 versus 2023, a lot to cheer about. Revenue has been up 171%. If you look at gross profit, so not net profit like we talked about, gross profit in 2023, 7 trillion. In 2022, it was 2.1. So again, an increase of 233%. There are several of those where you compare 2022 and 2023 and the numbers look good. Total assets, just very quick, total assets on the balance sheet of NNPC, 246 trillion naira. Compare that to where we were before, about 58. A lot of reasons to cheer. But I think, Ini, the real question is in the efficiency of the running of that organization. And to answer that, we have to compare it to other peers, other companies in a similar boat, like Saudi Aramco. We can do that in the conversation.
Yeah, please do that, because I mean that's the question, and talks going on the lips of a lot of Nigerians. What are they doing that Nigeria isn't doing? If we have impressive numbers, what do they mean exactly? Do they touch the lives and the areas they're supposed to? Perhaps we could do a little bit of comparison, and that could help.
Absolutely. So I'll do that. So the African Energy Council, we've looked at those numbers, we've crunched the numbers, we tried to understand it and tried to compare NNPC with its peers. So the first thing I think that stood out for us is one, what's the total revenue of Saudi Aramco? Now in 2023, they reported about 600 billion USD, and I'll be talking in dollars right now, so pardon me because I need to compare these two companies. 600 billion USD. It's a very significant number. It's a big, big number. It's almost synonymous to the market capitalization of many big companies, believe it or not. Okay. And that's just revenue for 2023. If you compare that to our revenue, NNPC, talking roughly around 18 billion. 600 billion compared to 18 billion. So here we're talking about a factor of almost 32, 33%, in my head doing the math, 33 times, I apologize. So their revenue is about 33 times, maybe 32 times higher than what we are doing. Then you now go backtrack and you say, okay, what does our production numbers look like? Saudi Aramco's production in 2023 average was about 12.8 million barrels per day. You go on the other side where we are, roughly for 2023, yes, we're much lower because of all the things that were happening, probably call it about 1.2 million barrels per day. Now, if you do the math between the two and you compare the two, we're probably talking a factor about 9. So they are 9 times our production, but their revenue is about 30 times our revenue. So you start to see, you talk about efficiency, you start to see that 9 times your production, 30 times your revenue. But why? So we interrogate those numbers and try to understand, well, what could those differences be? And that's the question we've been trying to answer. Yes, much of Saudi Aramco's production is onshore. That's true. Much of their reservoirs are a lot, shallower than ours. So their cost of production is much lower compared to ours. Yes, we have oil theft. Yes, we have, high operating costs and all of those high security costs. Yes, but those are the things that's robbing Nigeria off a lot of the profitability and the fund that should be going back into our coffers.
We do better. We agree we have high operational costs and all of that, but could we do better? Are we doing the best that we could? We're still discussing oil theft right here in Nigeria. I don't think they're discussing that in Saudi.
So that's a very important one that you mentioned there again, Ini. So just so you know, Saudi Aramco have a 99.8 availability of feedstock. Now, I'm going to say that again, 99.8 availability of feedstock. All of the systems and the processes that require feedstock, they get that about 99.8 times. Compare that to where we are right now. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we were debating, getting feedstock for the Dangote refinery. We can't even get it. He gets 60 million barrels. He needs 650, sort of 1,000 barrels per day. I apologize. We can't even get that. So these are some of the things that present a lot of challenges. When you look operationally in terms of how NNPC is set up, I still think that it has not gotten to that critical mass of running like a proper organization. There's still a lot of inefficiencies there. And I'll give you an example. Think about this, Ini. The ultimate goal of NNPC, and we've not hidden this at all, is that NNPC will go to market. It would IPO. You go into an initial public offering. Now, for you to go into an initial public offering, there's certain rules that you have to satisfy. The first of those is putting out your report on time. We're in August right now, and the report came out 2 days ago. All reports should come out in Q1. It's just a pure governance thing. So even from a simple governance, sort of corporate governance standpoint, we're failing. When you go into production, again, there are lots of failures in there. We can't supply feedstock. 20-30% of the crude that we produce, are unaccounted for. Much of that's being pillaged and stolen. A lot of these inefficiencies is what is robbing the country of the huge amount of revenues that we should see. But I think one thing I would say that's quite positive here is this, we're seeing us going in the right direction. For the last 4 years, profit has been increasing quite substantially. And I think that's a huge reason for us to cheer. But can we do more? Absolutely. And I'll throw this number here. In the last OPEC report for the month of July, our OPEC production was 1.3 million barrels per day. Now, the OPEC quota, what we need to satisfy for that is about 1.5, so we're still very short of that. If you go to Wale Edun's budget for 2023, his numbers was based on 1.78. So his budget was based on 1.78 million barrels per day. We're 1.3 today, so there's a massive shortfall, which means we have to go and borrow for us to finance that budget. Okay, their aspirational goal is 2 million barrels. We're so far away from these things, and I think it's a huge problem. We need to put those governance frameworks for us to be able to make that happen.
Honestly, Dr. Dikwa, we could have you for the whole show, but we have to pause it here and hope to continue another time. But, I mean, well, you're giving us a little bit of hope, saying we're in the right direction, even though we need to do more. So we'll take that home and go to bed a bit until we can have you again. Dr. Dikwa, thank you so much. Vice Chair, African Energy Council.
Thank you.